LEGO have made a few bad decisions over the past few years, but that's old news, and everyone, including myself, has already done plenty of complaining about those, so I decided to take a different approach today and talk about all the decisions and general trends I've noticed that I think LEGO have done right since I started collecting in 2017. Starting with probably the most obvious change they've made, the introduction of the 18 plus series of sets with the black box art. AFOLs have been around for a very long time, and it's not like LEGO aren't aware of this. UCS sets have been around pretty much since the beginning of LEGO Star Wars, and more than that, the LEGO architecture line was not only already aimed at adults, but it was even using the black box art instructions on black paper with preamble sections and shit since like at least 2009. But I think directly addressing this market with the launch of the LEGO art theme and the helmet collection for Star Wars was an incredible decision and marked a pretty cool turning point in the company, because ever since then, there's been at least 168 sets released under the 18 plus branding. Honestly, there's never been a better time to be an adult fan of LEGO. The next thing I want to mention is potentially the most under the radar yet exciting thing they've done recently, which is the introduction and continuation of the Bricklink designer program. To anyone who doesn't know, LEGO Ideas has a bit of an issue at the moment where each review stage has like 50 or more sets with 10,000 plus supporters, of which they end up producing between 1 and maybe 3 of them. This means that a lot of really great ideas get rejected and never made into a proper set. The Bricklink designer program is a way to give some of these rejected sets another shot at life in the form of a limited run of about 20,000 copies. This is a super cool program and a great way to get some unique, well-packaged, and extremely valuable sets. Mostly modular buildings and castles, but I'm sure you can find something else that's cool too. The next thing is more of a promise than something concrete they've actually implemented, and that's switching from the plastic bags to the paper ones. Easily the worst part about collecting LEGO is the insane waste that comes from these plastic bags, but the designs they've come out with for the paper replacements are such a huge improvement in every way. I haven't actually seen a paper bag in a set of mine, despite it being 2.5 years since the announcement. I think there was a creator set or something that launched last year that had the paper bags, but that's it? I don't know. Regardless, it's a great initiative, and the sooner it's fully implemented, the better. The next is, kind of selfishly, the most exciting thing on this list for me, and that's LEGO pivoting into the prequel era for the 18 plus sets in Star Wars. When asked about the prequel movies for the diorama collection, the LEGO Star Wars design team had the following to say. Basically, yeah, we most likely will. And since this interview, which was after the UCS gunship, they've put out the Commander Cody and Captain Rex helmets and are supposedly coming out with the UCS Venator later this year. This, combined with the UCS Razor Crest, which isn't prequel era but still, show that they're at least pivoting away from exclusively the original trilogy for 18 plus sets moving forward, which is incredibly good news. I'm not even thinking just selfishly here, just think about it. The reason they've relied so heavily on the original trilogy for their adult sets so far is that adults who love Star Wars and would pay that much for a LEGO set grew up with and prefer the original trilogy. But that isn't exclusively the case anymore. The kids who grew up with the prequels and even Clone Wars are adults now, and not only are interested in UCS sets from these eras, but can actively afford them now that they have a proper income. I don't think it's even dramatic to say that if LEGO wants to keep selling 18 plus sets well into the future, I think gradually incorporating more prequel era stuff isn't just important, it's vital. So it's great to see that they've hopefully started doing so already. Another cool thing I've noticed them do is just the increased representation across their minifigures. Over the past few years we've seen minifigures with guide dogs, hearing aids, prosthetic legs, wheelchairs, and most recently vitiligo. And of course there was the less subtle Everyone is Awesome set that came out in 2021. This kind of thing probably doesn't mean much to most people, but for kids especially, with any of these disabilities or whatever that might make them self-conscious, it's such a lovely gesture that's definitely worth mentioning. Another lovely gesture worth mentioning is the lack of sequel sets over the past few years. They really felt like they dominated catalogs from 2015 to 2020, but since then there hasn't been a single one, with the exception of the 4 Plus Resistance X-Wing. According to Greek Bricks, who was, at the time, a reliable leaker, he isn't anymore, the sequel sets simply didn't sell well and likely won't be returning. So good on LEGO for the good decision making there, long may it last. The last heavily biased thing I'll give credit to here is that we're getting a lot more clones these days. Since 2020, excluding the Bad Batch characters Boba Fett and Omega, and including the supposedly upcoming Shock Troopers, Fox, 332nd Troopers, Vaughn and Captain Rex, we'll have gotten 18 clone minifigures in the last 3 years, which is insane when you consider then the 3 years before that we got 4. We're back into the pre-sequels territory of clone minifigure output, and I am all for it. Long may it last. I hope we get some Wolfpack Troopers next year. Another great thing I've noticed is one that I've not seen a lot of people mention, and that's that LEGO are way quicker to give Star Wars minifigures arm printing these days. Din Djarin, Fennec Shand, Mace Windu, Omega, Darth Vader, Echo, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, and potentially Sabine. This isn't including figures from UCS sets where I'd expect them to have printing. This is specifically the figures within the last few years, and later this year, that I was surprised to see with arm printing. Maybe I'm just smoking crack, but I feel like arm printing in playsets was extremely rare, if not non-existent, during the sequel trilogy era of LEGO and beforehand, so it's a great trend to see. And finally we have what I believe to be probably the greatest single change LEGO have ever made to a theme, and that's switching the Speed Champions cars from 6 studs wide to 8 studs wide. It's hard to describe the difference this made to the cars to someone without just giving them the cars themselves in hand and feeling the difference in size and weight, but genuinely this elevated Speed Champions from an okay theme that you'd get because they were cheap enough and vaguely resemble some cool cars, into one of the best and most underrated themes on the market today. This is because this one change had some amazing knock-on effects. You can now fit 2 minifigures in the cars, whereas before you could only fit 1. The cars may have gotten wider by just 2 studs, but they got longer by way more than that because of the way that the car's shapes be. This freedom also allows the designers to come up with some just insanely clever building techniques to achieve such subtle angles and shapes, which they really couldn't have done before. I seriously can't emphasize how great of a change this was. It's probably the best change LEGO have made since the transition from yellow to light nougat skin for LEGO Star Wars minifigures. And that's everything I could think of off the top of my head. LEGO definitely aren't perfect these days and definitely make a lot of decisions that warrant the amount of criticism they get, but it's not all bad, and there's definitely a lot to be enthusiastic and excited about these days too. Shit, I even just realized I forgot about the introduction of the medium length leg pieces, which was also pretty big. I've definitely forgotten some other stuff too, so do share if you can think of any. Thanks for watching, farewell.